There seems to be a bit of a cultural difference when it comes to Japanese gaming companies, Capcom being one of them, and they seem to have this attitude of mods equals cheats. I'm not sure how far back this goes, but it's certainly not a brand new thing. However, in July of 2023, in a live-streamed Street Fighter VI tournament being run on PC, someone accidentally used a bare-skinned mod of Chun-Li. I'm avoiding certain words to not get demonetized. So a bare-skinned Chun-Li was broadcast to the world, and obviously Capcom was not happy about this. Many Capcom characters have had these types of mods made for them, not just Street Fighter characters. Resident Evil and Devil May Cry have pretty much seen every character turned into some kind of sexy or bare-skinned model. Capcom directly contacted the modder that made one of the mods for Ashley in the RE4 remake. They don't want this stuff out there. I don't think it's coincidence that just 3 months after the Chun-Li incident, Capcom published a big anti-cheat statement at their open conference, laying out how they intend to fight against the modding scene, citing reputational damage caused by malicious mods. They've had an anti-mod stance for a while, but this was the event that pushed them over the edge and likely got the people up top to really notice. Maximilian put this best in his video from October.
You gotta understand, the Chun-Li incident probably reached the eyes and ears of executives at the top of Capcom, so that might have had an impact on this situation. So at that point, higher-ups start paying attention. And before, there was no reason for them to pay attention because who gives a shit? But if something happens, then maybe this might be the turning point? This is like the first time Capcom's even acknowledged this shit. There was already like a level of surveillance going on for sure, but they let shit rock. As soon as it starts showing up at the top of websites, as soon as they get a message about it, that they were just like, wait a minute, what are people doing with our game? And now suddenly, oh god, people are modding in like hyper-realistic TNA into our games. So suddenly Chris Redfield's, junk in the trunk makes it to the front page of Kotaku or some dumb shit, much less Chun-Li's naked in a tournament. That has now created press that is affecting the brand recognition. 99% of the mods that are out there are actually shit that's not threatening to the brand in some way. I hope this is just like, hey, we want to scare you. I hope this is just like, hey, we're just trying to scare people.
The image of the product is tarnished when mods are released that violate public order and morals without permission. Mods can be mistaken for legitimate implementations and can cause bad publicity. So they have a moral objection to these spicy mods, and they worry if seen by the public they can cause confusion, with people thinking they're an actual representation of the product. And yeah, if someone watches modded gameplay that isn't disclosed, they can think that's how the game actually is. Not just talking about bare-skinned mods, but any mod, be it graphical or gameplay or whatever. I'm sure that happens, and yeah, I understand they wouldn't want that. But we gotta talk about how mods are not just about taking off a character's clothes. For every bare-skinned mod you find, you'll find hundreds or thousands of mods that tweak things like enemy damage, game speed, color, UI, field of view, physics, difficulty, and of course, cracks for on-disc DLC, which shouldn't be there in the first place. Yes, Capcom is also concerned about hackers accessing the day one content they're withholding from their customers to charge them for later. And I'm sure they don't like seeing people create their own skins for characters when they really want to be charging them exorbitant amounts of money for cosmetics. So this isn't just about a moral objection to bare-skinned mods, it's also about money. Capcom's October Open Conference also has pages dedicated to the burden the mod scene creates on customer support, with people coming to them when their games have issues after updates that break mods, save data corruption, etc. And to this I'm sympathetic. I'm sure it is annoying and resource consuming to be helping out with issues that mods may be creating. They state that increased customer support loads affect development costs and result in lower quality games, which I think is quite the exaggeration when we're talking about games that already have $10 million or $100 million budgets. I don't think some extra customer support work is being done at the cost of game quality. That's just a bunch of BS. And they make it absolutely clear creating future profits is what cheat and piracy prevention is all about. Of course, that's all that matters, right? But beyond the controversial costume mods, the DLC cracking, and the community-made cosmetics that take away from store purchases, Capcom has an even more disturbing position on mods overall, classifying them as cheats. And yes, of course there are cheats, and in multiplayer games you obviously don't want people installing cheats that give them advantages competitively. I totally get that, but they're taking a nuclear approach. And recently there's been a lot of talk online about Capcom supposedly adding Enigma DRM to old titles in order to shut down unauthorized mods. At this point, the reports are conflicting. Steam users have been posting about Enigma DRM being added to Resident Evil Revelations in a new bug fix update for a game that's over a decade old. The original tweet that spread this information got a lot of traction, and there are plenty of gaming news sites that are running the story. The new mod-breaking DRM was reportedly included in an update that fixed some bugs, but the update was quickly rolled back, with the promise of a new version coming very soon. So it's yet to be seen if mods are in fact in danger of being affected. And it's not even confirmed that this is 100% what happened, as we can't verify it since the update was pulled. Is it a legit story, or was Enigma never actually part of the Revelations update as many have said? At this point, I don't know where to look for the right answers, but I do see posts of people saying they've verified Enigma's presence in several other old Capcom titles already. Hopefully we get the truth of the situation quickly. But it was a real big scare that bounced around the gaming sphere as everyone got worried that Capcom was ready to start updating a bunch of old games to be mod-proof. Given their public stance on mods, I think there's a legitimate reason to be concerned, especially since weeks before this, YouTube channels showcasing mods for Monster Hunter were issued takedown requests and copyright strikes, threatening their channels. Capcom seems ready to go to war over this. And there's a real fear that these policies are going to be applied to single-player only games as well, because even though there's no danger of multiplayer unfairness, there's still the DLC and cosmetics issue, and the bare-skinned mods that, according to Capcom, damaged their reputation. The Devil May Cry community is particularly concerned about this, as they have a modding scene that works hard on Devil May Cry 5 as well as other titles. For example, Turbo Mode, which speeds up the action, was included in the special edition of DMC5, but only the standard version is available on PC. There's no Turbo Mode DLC, so what are players supposed to do? Well, they mod it. And what's the problem with that? They made Virgil purchasable as DLC, but not Turbo Mode. So if people mod the game to be like Turbo Mode, that's not affecting their DLC sales, so who cares? When it comes to DMC3, a game from 2005, the modding scene has been crucial to getting that game to where it is now, notably the Style Switcher mod that allows for on-the-fly switching during gameplay, like you can during DMC4 and 5. A system that was implemented for the official Nintendo Switch port of DMC3 in 2017. So obviously Capcom likes the idea of DMC3 having this style switching system. And the only way to do that on PC is with a mod. If you implement DRM that restricts modding, you risk undoing all the good work that dedicated, passionate players have done to keep the game alive. The company that makes this DRM, Enigma, has unfortunately taken the same anti-consumer, anti-modding attitude as Capcom, saying, maybe you are so angered because you can't use the cheats anymore, and that's just real classy. For myself, as a Resident Evil player, mods have become really important to my experience just from an accessibility position. The tight FOV of Resident Evil 4 Remake and the constant zooming in and out of the camera when aiming during fast action gives me motion sickness. The game has no way to adjust these things to the degree that I need them, so I use mods to widen the FOV and fix the camera so it doesn't zoom in when I aim. Call this cheating if you want, but it's not like I'm lowering enemy health or giving myself double ammo. I'm just trying to get the controls and the camera to a position where it plays better for me. And then on top of that, there are so many fun difficulty mods and cross-game costumes, and there's just a great community of people having fun and celebrating the game. Modding culture is important. It goes all the way back to the earliest PC games, and it's a great way to preserve old titles, taking games from other eras and giving them an HD facelift. Modding allows for increased player accessibility, creative expression, and teaches a new generation of programmers skills they can take into game design and make their own masterpieces. I understand the concerns of companies who want to protect the integrity of their property and protect their profits, but I just don't think it's worth it to make games as unmoddable as possible. The benefits far outweigh the downsides, in my opinion. But I don't think publishers are ever going to see it that way, and in the long run, I fear we're going to lose this fight. Here for a little conversation about this topic is someone who is particularly concerned about the future of modding and IP-based content creation on YouTube, friend of the channel WaifuRuns. Hope you enjoy. So, Waifu, tell me what the hell is going on here, and how does mainly I've already kind of covered what's happening generally. But if you could tell me more specifically, how does this affect the DMC scene?
Well, I mean, it affects everyone the same way, but like, basically just, I don't know. I did a bunch of research today and I came across this video by this guy, Moon Channel, who is a lawyer, and he goes over this kind of stuff. Like as a lawyer, it's like hashtag not legal advice, but he breaks it down based on case law and what the actual laws state and stuff. And it's like way worse than I thought it was going to be. I'm actually like updating my resume to like apply for jobs because it just makes me so jaded about content creation as a whole. Not even just mods, but just if you make content around someone else's intellectual property, you're just in such a vulnerable state that it just doesn't even seem sustainable to me after what I learned. So basically, what I learned from watching his video that I just linked to you is that he's talking about the Point Crow versus Nintendo mod thing. I don't know if you know about that at all. Do you?
I don't.
So basically, Point Crow commissioned someone and paid them $10,000 to make a multiplayer mod for Breath of the Wild.
Okay, I remember that happening, yes.
Yeah, and so Nintendo sent him a copyright strike on the video, and then he appealed it, and they're like, no, fuck you. And then they copyright strike like a ton of his videos. And then he put out like a statement that was like legally informed about like what was going on and stuff. And then eventually took that down and blah, blah, blah. But the video that I sent you by Moon Channel basically breaks that down, that whole situation. And what I learned from that, I mean, it's better to just watch that video, to be honest. But what I learned is that any sort of modification, so like when you buy a game, you have to agree to end user license agreement. And in that, the company puts in a bunch of rules about how you can and cannot interact with the game. And basically the way that the case law works out, and with the ULEA is, or EULA rather, but basically if you are breaking that agreement in any way, then the company has essentially all legal right to DMCA you, because you're using their intellectual property in a way that they could determine to be harmful to the IP or serve as like a replacement or a derivative copy of said IP. So basically, from my understanding, is that like if they put anything in a user agreement like that says you can't do something, if you then do it, then they're within their legal rights to DMCA you in for a video. Like they can't stop you from doing it yourself. Like if you're just a regular person and you mod your game, like there's nothing they can do. But like if you make a video and you upload it or whatever, then they can DMCA you. And then he goes into some legal precedent about how similar stuff was actually proven in court. Like someone took a bunch of Doom 3 mods, right? Doom 2 level packs basically, and they like put them on a CD and then were selling them. Mm-hmm. And then they got sued, and the court determined that those were derivative copies of the game, and that classified as a copyright infringement.
Well, that's when you get to selling things directly. right? I mean,
Yeah,
you see that a
but
little differently than making videos of your
according
gameplay
to
that
this
showcases
video,
mods.
yeah, for sure. According to this video from Moon Channel, it doesn't matter if you're selling it because the legal precedent that Nintendo was pursuing on the Point Crow thing was not that he was like creating something to fuck with their IP, but that the code itself is part of the IP, and that going through methods to go around protections of that is like explicitly illegal. So if they put something in, the example he uses, like Nintendo has a way to record your gameplay on a Switch, right? And so if you're going around and recording gameplay through some other means, like using a capture card, then technically that's a legal gray area because in the user agreement, you're not allowed to tamper with or modify any of the hardware or software to circumvent their intentional ways of using it.
So anti-consumer, anti-ownership, right? Like,
yeah, well, you don't own.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
That they've made everything, you know, based on these long legal agreements, sort of like you can't modify this, you can't tamper with your own property.
From my understanding, that like, so the metaphor people will give is like, what if you bought a car from like Honda? You know, like, are they going to be like, well, you can't modify, like, you can't put this different muffler on it, or whatever. Right?
Well, they're going the same direction now. I mean, now,
yeah, well,
smart implementation.
That if that's how it's going, that's how it's going. But that's like the natural analogy that a lot of people come up with is like, well, you own it, so you could do whatever you want to it or whatever, right? But the way that it's covered in law, from my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, but from watching a couple of videos and doing a little bit of research, is that basically the code itself, like the product as a whole, including all the code and its how it's constructed, is the intellectual property. So by tampering with it, then you're legally like fucking with it. That's creating a derivative copy of it, which is just insane to me. Like, that's wild. And the thing is, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that you fucked with it. Like, the thing that really got me bent out of shape is this applies to any use of the game in a way that's not specifically allowed through the user agreement. So like speedrunning, for instance, if a company was like, we don't want people speedrunning our games, we feel like it has detrimental impact on our IP because it's not what we want, then they could DMCA like everyone that ever speedruns the game, right? And then
but
there's really
how?
no
I mean,
legal
even if they're
repercussion.
not using mods, I mean, how would that be possible?
Well, because it's the same way that Nintendo can, you know, send cease and desist to people that run tournaments. Or like, they're using the IP in a representative way that is not what they want. You know what I mean? It's the same way that like Disney can sue people who make fan art and, you know, sell it on their like at a artist alley and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, it just, from my understanding, that's like something that's totally possible. And the legal precedent would back them. And also, even if it doesn't, you'd have to countersue someone like Nintendo or Capcom or some multi-billion-dollar company, which no one is going to do, right? So basically, they have all the power, and the only thing that would stop them is potentially negative social backlash. But I doubt that that would even be enough, to be honest.
Oh, Christ. You know, it's like, it seems like we're in or at least we've been in a situation where all of us knew this stuff, but it's like we click yes on the agreements, but the companies don't actually do anything about it. They just kind of like, turn a blind eye to it. But it's kind of like using video game soundtracks as the background of your YouTube video, which a lot of us do. But at any moment, the owner of that music or the company could just be like, no. And then all your videos that happen to use that music for the past years suddenly all get demonetized. Like, that could happen at any moment.
That actually happened to me the other day.
Yeah.
So Machine Girl, they are like a indie music group that does a lot of the music that I use in my videos. I actually like asked them for permission a couple years ago. Like, hey, can I use your music in my videos and blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, that's great. Like, please do. And I was able to like monetize and do like use as much of their music in my videos as I wanted for like years. And then they recently signed with a label like 6 months ago. Yep. And now all of the videos get claimed. And a couple of them get like I can't even monetize them at all. Yeah. And like I've reached out to them and stuff and they're just, you know, ghost me, right? And I get it. I mean, like they're doing their thing, like they gotta make money and blah blah blah. But it's just like one of those things that could just happen, like whenever, right? Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I wasn't joking about updating my resume. Like I just think that content creation surrounding other IPs as a whole is just like there was always that underpinning of like, yeah, at any point they could probably just claim everything. Right. But it seemed one of those things where like they wouldn't do that. That feels like it would be too detrimental to them that they would justify doing it. But you know, the further they push it, the less that seems to be true. So it's like, well, I feel like it's just gonna happen eventually. So I don't know.
Yeah, appears to be on the edge of possible dark times.
For sure. It's one of those things where you think like, oh, this is just like the nature of the internet. It's just going to keep going like this, right? But then things change, you know?
Well, it sucks to end on a downer, but Waifu, thank you for joining me for this call.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's going to have a spring in their step today.
Oh, yeah, great.
All right. It's always a pleasure talking to you, man.
For sure.
All right. Take care.
Later.